What's up, folks? Casual Dad here. Excuse me. And we're going to knock out a few PvP games, synced PvP games, while the event is still going. Now, I'm going to run around and just play some of the weird decks that I've been playing, and then we'll look to... Unfair weight here. We're going to look to my opponents to show some of the more meta stuff that we're seeing a lot. So, let's just play with some of these. I'm going to play a couple fun ones and then just sort of talk a little bit more about what we're seeing when I'm playing against it, and also kind of what you can do if you're struggling a little bit with kind of what to play. Maybe you have a limited collection, maybe you're struggling a little bit to fill your deck, maybe you don't know which warlord to use, that sort of thing. So I'm probably going to try to knock out 4 games. We'll see how the timing goes, and I might do more. And then after that, I'll do a quick recap of how things went, and then go from there. Now, right out of the gate, watch me lose after saying this, I would consider Canoness to be a weaker warlord. I mentioned this in my coverage of Sync PvP in general. The Canoness's ability relies really heavily on your cards dying. And you just don't want your cards to die that quickly in the Synced PvP because it's the 400 deck points. If you're losing cards quickly enough to really benefit from Canoness's ability, it's going to really hurt you overall. Counterpoint to that, Canoness is relatively cheap, and even a couple free attacks with the big beefy cards you're going to get in this kind of matchup are still worth something. So it's not the worst idea, it's just not what I personally would do. And I would generally rate her low. So we'll see how this goes. Now I'm playing the Mask just because I really like Chaos. Just as a faction in the game, and also just because the Greater Demons are so cool, and to have an excuse to field all 4 of them, I just can't turn that down. You got to do it. Ooh. I got counters to this. So far, it's relatively standard. A lot of the cards I'm seeing here are going to be ones that you'll see in a Vol deck as well. They're just the upper end of the cost spectrum. If you're trying to fill a deck with Servants of the Emperor and you don't have super heavies, that's kind of where you're going to go. So we should see a pretty decent mix of melee and ranged. Maybe all melee, but we'll see. Okay, yeah. So just using the upper point cost cards in the faction. And Mask decks are quite fast, and a lot of these warlords can fly, so I should have a pretty serious early advantage here. Going to try to move relatively quickly because these, as you can see from deployment, these games do run a little bit slower. Again, one of the reasons I appreciate the usual play of the game, but still enjoy Synced PvP when it comes up. But yes, it is slower. Hopefully not too bad. This is not bad. Griffin over there is doing a nice job keeping up the tempo as best you can. Doing range, so not really leaning on Canoness's ability, but also I've got a pretty gnarly offensive melee line here that I could definitely see not wanting to punch. Now, I believe that I do have a bit of an edge here, so I'm going to go ahead and wail on this. Especially just at the moment, my melee line is like at least double, probably more, than what I'm seeing there, even with bonus attacks. Like 39 damage for the bonus attack. Like, hey, okay, cool, thanks. And here too, if he does Psychic or Melee, Fabius is going to take out the Canada Superior over there. Because, just to recap, the Mask's ability is while a card is above a certain health threshold, above 50% wounds, it attacks first. Even if it's not your turn. So like right there. You can do that to cheese out the bonus attack, but I don't know that that was totally worth it. Though I will say that Fear is holding me down. Rank 4 Fear, good note to drop in there. If you have a deck that can benefit from Fear cards, especially if they're higher level Fear cards, that max level Fear is nuts. So you can see I'm benefiting a lot from my Keeper of Secrets. And then this guy here is definitely going to stick around a lot longer than he otherwise would. Although he just put him in front of the poison guy. I wouldn't have done that. It may keep him alive a little bit longer than the Bloodthirster, but not by a lot. And it will guarantee that he will die where he may not have otherwise. Apologies for the voice. I'm still drinking some hot drinks over here and trying to get it back. Ooh, man, there's that big game hunter. That's going to figure prominently here. And you can see there's that purple indicator when the Mask's ability is active, so which cards are over their half health so that they will get that bonus attack. You can see that most of mine are down. I've still got 4 cards in deck. Canoness has 5. I have the edge here, but I can't say how long that's going to last. That will be a wipe because I will lose my Bloodthirster in return here. I think that's a wipe. I should check that. Yeah. Splat. And I'm going to end up with 3 cards on the board against... Well, 3 cards in deck, excuse me, against the opponent's 2. And I would generally... The Mask and the Canoness are pretty close if they end up toe-to-toe, if there's not a huge... if there's no clear winner in the wings, there's someone to wail on the Warlord separately. Canoness has shields. Mask has fear. I believe the Mask has slightly higher hit points. Yeah, slightly higher hit points. But no ranged attack, and only gets rank 2 fear. So I really don't want to get this to be a slugfest between Canoness and the Mask. But my guess is I should be relatively able to handle this because I do have heavy psychic, which I don't expect to see at all on the other side. Strong card, that rank 4 shields is very, very good. And getting that with Furious Charge at a pretty decent points cost. I wonder if this player was even able to fill deck points. I think so. But they can actually be a challenge with only so many slots. This guy. If you are going melee Servants of the Emperor, you want him in your deck. One challenge I was really having is that, yes, you do want him. You also want the... blah, 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 blah. Oh, what's his face? We're going to poison this. What's his butt? Blah, blah. Hicks. Corporal Hicks is an absolute monster in this. He's got Furious Charge and Big Game Hunter and does a lot of damage for his 25-point frame. Really good piece. Definitely one you want to bring in your deck. And I'm just moving around here just to say it. I did go ahead and put my Unclean One in front of the shielded card to go ahead and get that poison in there to start dealing those hit points. There's a good chance that that card is going to end up alive on the board in the end game here. But we'll see what else does. I don't know what the last card is going to be. I'm guessing it's the Penitent Engine. Penitent Engine. Gah, all the phlegm. 'Tis the season to be sickly. Blessings of Nurgle have favored me greatly. Alright, so pretty gnarly. And now there, if you are playing Canoness, you want to be really careful of your deployment with your heavy-hitting cards. You want your most durable cards on the very left, so that they're the ones that get the most bonus attacks, or you want your heaviest hitting cards to the right. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not, because the card to the right is going to die last if turns are close, and it will get the most hits off before it dies. Card on the left can take the most hits, so that varies. That's the way to maximize your bonus attacks. What was going on there is the heaviest melee hitter was all the way kind of on the wrong end, and allowed me to kind of nuke over there and take it out. But that wasn't necessarily known, because there was no way to know that in advance until I saw what I deployed. So didn't necessarily do that wrong. Here, knows that the Paragon is probably going to die first, so has the Big Game Hunter over here to benefit from those bonus attacks. Also fairly certain that the engine will be able to take out my Keeper of Secrets, which actually may not be the case. I think I've actually got it here. Ooh, yuck. Probably a mistake, especially with those bonus attacks. I will lose the Great Unclean One, but I will get to keep my Keeper of Secrets. And actually my Lord of Change, so we're really going to mess this up here in exchange for that guy. Unfortunately, he is over 40, so we'll take some hits from that Big Game Hunter, and that may cost me the game, but we'll see. Excuse me. Now, I wouldn't say either of these decks is really that good. I've talked a little bit about where the Canoness struggles. You're seeing bonus attacks trigger, but they're not triggering enough to be more worthwhile than the other Servants of the Emperor Warlords. But this could be which Servants of the Emperor Warlord Griffin has. Like, it's totally fine. Do you. But keep in mind, if you are going to get those bonus attacks, you want to make sure you're in a position to benefit from them the most. Yeah, that'll do it comfortably. So position your cards knowing which ones are going to die first, and then you want to get the most possible out of your bonus attacks. So there we go, that's one. That was very, very slow, so I'm going to do one more, and then we'll kind of see where we're at with time. So I don't want this to be a super long video. And I've got all the rewards, so that's not going to be very exciting. Just going to keep on going. Now this is one just for my buddy. Got a favorite fan on my YouTube channel, so we're going to go ahead and do it just for him. He was asking about Santa, old Logan Grimnar himself, and made some good points. That Logan's ability is he does overflow damage, where any melee damage that's done over the target defending card's hit points will be done 1.5 times to adjacent cards from left to right. And we'll talk about that more in a minute as it actually happens, which is very good in this because there are so many fear and shield cards. That's a way to do extra damage. Oh, okay. That's a way to do extra damage to those off main target. And of course, I put then in as many expensive, beefy, beat stick Space Wolves as I could, just to be in theme there. But yeah, Logan's ability is very good. Also at max level, he is a monster. Basically, no one wants to go toe-to-toe with this at the end, especially that Furious Charge and Berserk, which rarely triggers, but is not nothing. But 400 hit points with Furious Charge and a 126 base damage is real scary. I was chuckling a bit because this is a Parasite of Mortrex deck, and I love to see the Parasite of Mortrex kicking around because it's such a cool warlord. Also, one of the potentially better picks in PvP, especially with this super high max level, very high points cost deck. You're going to have a lot of really big beefy cards, and if the Parasite is able to strategically focus fire, it will be able to benefit from that and use the bulk of opponent decks against them because it has that ability where whenever a card takes melee damage, it becomes infested, and then if an infested card dies from any cause, it then does, what is it, 40%? Yeah, 40% of its base wounds to adjacent cards. So if I took this guy out in the middle here, you'd be looking at like 120 damage to every card next to it, which is a lot of damage, especially if you're also hitting it in additional. Oh, God. All right, I see how this is going. It's got Fear in there. This is such a good card. Man, I cannot wait to get mine high enough level to where it's actually like decent. Mine is, I think, level 4 at this point. Now, I am not super pumped about this. I do kind of have to wail on him, which is exactly what he wants, but it's what I want too. So you can see that infestation triggering. I mean, Tyberos loves it. He just wants to murder stuff. God, that guy's scary. Yeah, we got Tyberos here with rank 2 Fear. Yeah. Rank 4 Berserk, rank 2 Fear. He old murder shark. Probably going to kill a middle guy whose death blow is going to make a significant difference. Now, here's what's tricky. We both kind of have the same things going on where I don't want to lose cards in the middle like that because you saw me take damage on my adjacent cards. But also, he doesn't want to leave cards on the board with health like that. Because if I nail that thing for anything more than 30, that damage is going to be dealt to the adjacent card, as shown right there. Now, that probably wasn't the best possible outcome for me, but it wasn't bad. But that's the thing, too. So I don't want to leave a very high base health injured card on the board when I redeploy a bunch of other stuff next to it, because it will then do a bunch of damage to my healthy cards that pop up when it dies. Likewise, he doesn't want to leave me any avenues where I can hit something and do a ton of overflow damage. So if he's got a card with 5 health there, I nail it with this dude. That's doing like 200 and more than 200 damage to the card next to the one I just killed. So it supercharges my attacks. Now, reasons why Logan is not the ideal choice in this campaign. He's very expensive. So when you're looking to fill your deck, you'll find that you don't get as much flexibility as you would with some of the other warlords. Also, his ability is very powerful when it triggers, but with the bulk of opponent's cards that you're going to run into, it's fairly common for it not to trigger or not to trigger when and where you need it. When it does trigger, it's amazing. But also because cards have like 300 plus hit points, the overflow damage is less likely to get the bonus kills that it would in normal play. So Logan's actually weaker in this than he is in kind of normal ladder play. Still, I would consider him a really powerful piece. Sorry. And I'm not going to lose Tyberos yet, but I'm about to. Shields, man. Gross. So I want to line something really fragile next to this guy and just hammer it home. So we're both bleeding cards. I'm bleeding cards a little bit more slowly, but I do think he's got the edge there. I took out a couple heavy hitters but the Death Leaper does a lot of damage and isn't close to dying yet. And then this thing is nowhere close to damage. It's going to cause real havoc. Notably by killing Tyberos before his turn even goes right here. That's going to suck. Now, my buddy here looks a little bit fragile, but he's also got max level fear, so he's not going to take very much damage, even if this guy hits me with a charged melee attack, which he chose not to do because of the crazy amount of damage I'd be about to do. Ooh, but that hurts. Alright. So let's see here. So I'm going to soften this guy up as best I can. Yeah. So that I have a real nasty overflow shot on the Psyker in the middle. And then we'll drop this guy in here, so in case he's tempted to do Psychic again, I can still clear shields off this bad boy on the right, and also the Fear will keep that thing from doing as much damage as quickly. Splat. Ooh, that's bad. I'm going to lose Astaroth. I'm not sure if that was a good trade. Ew. I've got shields off on the Scourge. That is good. And then Sven, of course, is a Space Wolf. He's got a bunch of hit points and a high base melee attack. And then also has Death Blow. And Death Blow does count as a melee attack. So for both the Parasite and for Logan, it will trigger their abilities if a Death Blow kills an opposing card. So the overflow damage or the infect. So yeah, this is kind of a great matchup. I love it. Well, I don't love that. All right. Now he's got to keep track though, because he has to keep doing a steady stream of melee, or else my cards will not get the infect thing. But at the same time, he's got to weigh the benefits there and see if that's worth the amount of damage he's going to take back. And losing the Inspire there. Ooh, I'm playing a little bit more aggressive because my final card is Logan himself. Logan can easily smack the crap out of the Parasite, assuming that my board, I'm not completely overwhelmed on the board, which I don't think I will be. I believe I've seen most of the power pieces in there, but there could still be a surprise in that final card. Okay, that's not so bad. It's not good. It's not bad. So we've got this double Death Blow on the board with very high melee attacks. If he manages to kill those, it will probably wipe my board, but it will probably also wipe his. And he doesn't want to go okay. Doesn't want to go naked board against Logan. And that will kill, yep, there it is. And then that should... Ooh, yep, there it is. So there the overflow damage did it. So Logan is still outnumbered. Oh, hey, look at that. Now here I'm going to go a little bit gutsy, because neither one of these has the oomph to kill Logan outright. Actually, maybe wrong. Let me check that again. So this guy, 94, 90. So he'll be hitting for 180. Plus 94 still is not enough, especially since the first melee hit is going to be reduced because he'll have to do the Infest, which will hit for not quite half damage. And there, I think he's trying to use the Infest against me, or... Oh, what do I do here? So I will hit him for when I gotta go. We'll choose Violence. So I'm opting for the Violence route. I think I have enough hit points to tank the best he can throw at me. Wow, so that... Hang on. That is odd, because that should have applied Infect, and it didn't. So Logan could have taken him out solo, but that's, yeah. Okay, there we go. Love it. Major props to the guy for playing the Parasite. Parasite is awesome. And I do think a really strong contender for this game type, but I would definitely lean on as much target acquired as you have. There's the Lictor, and then there's also the Tyranid Prime. The Tyranid Prime is new. So that was 2 games. That one went fairly quickly. I'm going to play at least one more. I'll probably go for the 4 that I talked about in the beginning. We'll try it. I'm going to bust out a Parasite. I know we just saw it, but I love the Parasite. So I've got my 1 target acquired card in here. I usually run 2, but we'll see how this goes. When I was playing before, when I was trying to get through the whole ladder, I was seeing a ton of ranged decks, especially Tau. And so that's why I've got a bunch of ranged cards in here too. Because again, once you apply the Infect, it doesn't matter what kills the infected card, as long as it was hit at least once with a melee attack before it dies. Oh, great. I'm glad we get to see a Greyfax, because I did talk about how common Greyfax is in Sync PvP and how incredibly strong she is when you have 400 deck points to spend. If you are running Greyfax, there is no reason whatsoever not to get the max bonus. Leave 150 points unspent and get that 75% bonus. I've seen a couple players jump on here playing Greyfax who only have a 40% bonus, and it's just like, what are you doing? Don't do that. Now here I'm a little bit curious to see. I've always been confused about how Greyfax counts starting wounds, which a lot of abilities trigger on. So you'll see a lot of players run Medicae with Greyfax. I personally don't do that, in large part because my personal thought on that is that it's only going to do healing based on the card's base hit points, not the 1.75 hit points that it has in a Greyfax deck. So the utility is much reduced. But if I am wrong, and he counts as having 400 base hit points, then the Parasite is incredibly strong against this. And it's going to be a little bit difficult to know until we get into this a bit. And that may have been a poor choice, but we'll see. Sorry about the coughing. I probably am going to have to call it after this just because my voice is getting tired. Oh. Probably going to do Psychic, as he should. This is a tough matchup, too. I really need to win by a lot. It can't be close, because Greyfax will just utterly murder the Parasite in one-on-one. And that's one of the biggest weaknesses of a Parasite deck in general, is that the Parasite itself will struggle in the end game. Pretty much no matter who you're up against. In terms of raw stats, it's on par with the Mask in terms of being extremely fragile. Yeah, you need to die. I want to kill all of these, but Kodiaz is by a mile probably the most dangerous. And this is going to be a wipe, so I just have to hope I wipe him right back. So I'm counting on that death blow here, but man, this guy went down fast. When you're hit with 2 Psionic Blasts with Big Game Hunter in one of them, that's just a lot of damage. Okay, so I do think that the Infect explosion damage is based on the card's base wounds before it is buffed by Greyfax, which makes it significantly weaker as a counter to Greyfax, which is a real bummer. But it does also mean that I was really kind of correct in saying that you don't want to include Medicae with Greyfax. There's Medicae, it's going to heal for like peanuts. It is max level Medicae, which is great, but it still is not worth the points. You could put an endless, sure, 65 is a lot of healed health, but it's nothing compared to what you should have gotten for hitting that on a 400 hit point card. So it's not, I don't think that was worth it. And a lot of players put Medicae in there because they assume that the Medicae will heal based on the buffed hit points, which of course it doesn't. So, okay. Glad to see that confirmed. Glad we talked about that right there. Yeah, it's extremely common to see Medicae in Greyfax decks, and it's not worth it. Put one more Plinky damage in there. Put a... that could have been the 7-point Inspire. You don't need it right now, but generally in a Greyfax deck, I do throw the 7-point Inspire there before I put in a Medicae. I'm probably still going to lose this one, but in part for the same reason I wouldn't put Medicae in there, because the explosive damage from the Parasite is weaker against Greyfax. Oh, yuck. Now, what is funny is I will benefit from that target acquired, because that will take some of the heat for like 3 seconds off of my shooty bug on the right here. Oof, gross. All right, we got 104, man. Let's see here. This guy does have ranged. Yeah, that's not going to do it. Love the Parasite. I don't think the Parasite has what it takes for this. modifier. Wow, wow, wow. That's a lot of shooting. Right, good gravy. Yeah, if you're bringing Greyfax, you do want to bring the Living Saint over there. Is it Celestine? Celestine. Just the combination of stats and Endless is a little bit absurd. Alright, so this is our third game. It should be a relatively quick stomping, and then I'll do one more with what I think is going to be one of the absolute meta monsters, just to show you what that looks like. And then watch me lose. But still, certainly a deck worth considering, and a faction worth considering. One of the more common ones that a lot of people were running around earlier, so I can't, of course, I'm not going to pretend that I made it up, but it's one of the warlords who I've long considered one of the most powerful. 600 hit points on the revive. Good God. All right. And this, I think, is the new card that appears in the Battle Pass. I'm also pretty sure that that's a bug. I think it does have a name. But sure. It's fine. It's a very powerful card. What's the forecast? 34. It's pricey and does not have those stats normally, because you're very unlikely to get the full 75% bonus with that in a deck, but maybe. And one of the things I appreciate about it is an Inquisitor, like Inquisitorial. It's an Inquisitor. But it's exactly the kind of character that an Inquisitor would have in their retinue, where a lot of the time you can play a Greyfax deck and it looks like, you know, Cadians just happen to be with an Inquisitor. Go ahead and pop this. Womp womp. Alright, last one. We're going to jump right in and do it. And then we'll just do a quick recap. Assuming I don't lose my voice completely. Okay. Last one on the list. So just to say again, Greyfax way up top. You just saw how scary Greyfax is. I do think that Helbrecht is very strong. One of the reasons that I think Helbrecht is better than Santa is just that Helbrecht's ability stacks so much damage and it snowballs, where I really like Grimnar's ability, but he's not getting kills at the same rate that he would be normally, so his ability's utility is reduced. Oh crap, I don't even have a deck for this guy. Alright, Shas'O is the single strongest warlord in this modifier. I will say that with fairly, quite a bit of confidence, just because he's got a flat buff that just like all of my cards have increased attack stats. Just every turn, they just have it. And then in addition to that, just the insane firepower of Tau cards. Watch, now that I've said this, watch me actually just completely get wrecked here. This is a case where I would include a Medicae. Where's my Medicae? There he is. Okay, let's check 21 just to see it. I can do that, but I like the target acquired. Nah, I like the outflank too. Nah, we'll keep the target acquired. There's a lot of fear and big beefy stuff in here. So just leaning on your heaviest hitters, your battle suits, and we'll see Shas'O's ability in practice. He is epic, so this is a very difficult warlord to get and somewhat rare. A lot of the cards I have in here are legendary, but just look at your Tau collection and take your biggest, heaviest ranged hitters, and I think that you will find that you have something that performs just fine. And so I would say at max level, Tau kind of have the advantage. Shooting is generally more powerful than melee. Tau have some of the best shooting in the game, and then also they have abilities that passively buff their shooting. Just like flat, you do more damage. As I've said with both Canoness and I suppose the Parasite, I don't think that Darkstrider is the best choice. He is cheap, so you can fill a deck more, but his bonus attacks will trigger a lot less often just because your cards won't be dying at the same rate that they do in your more kind of typical play. What you gonna do? Because yeah, if you're playing just normally playing in the ladder, that you have taunt cards sprinkled in there and cards meant to die sprinkled in there, really makes Darkstrider very powerful because he can then dance his cards around and get bonus attacks. But in this, cards generally die slowly, or more slowly than you want them to, or not necessarily in the way that you want them to. and that does make abilities that rely on your cards dying or just getting kills a little bit less reliable. So like that is just an utterly insane volume of fire. And then every turn, Shas'O rotates between three traits. The blue flash is plus 25% base ranged. The red flash you're going to see is plus 40% base ranged. So 1.4 times their base melee attack or ranged attack, which stacks with Inspire. And then the third phase is a yellow recharge symbol that decreases damage taken by 20%. So you have this like perfect cadence where it's like softening shot, devastating blow, recovery time where you take less back. So your more powerful cards have this great rotation where they're not dying. So that just by itself, just in concept, is why Shas'O is so good. And then add on top of that just the sheer power that a Tau gun line represents by itself. And then also the fact that you have 400 deck points where you can load up max level of the scariest things. Like, it is real terrifying. And I'm going to take some damage back here, but I'm already ahead by a good bit. And as much as the Swarm Lord is scary in the end game, Shas'O also has shields and has a ranged attack, which the Swarm Lord does not. So we'll have abilities to clear shields on top of some real devastating stuff. So let's see here. How many shields you got, buddy? You got one shield left. Let's take care of that. And this is just going to be gross. I do feel a little bit bad here because I've got that Inspire. I'm about to get the recharge for the plus 40%. Boom, there it is. Cleared the last shield off this thing, and then we're just going to lay into them. I am not going to actually kill all three the way I thought I was, but they're significantly diminished. And he hasn't managed to take out either of my beefy Riptides or Longstrike himself, and his deck is getting real thin. Now he did take a mixed ranged Swarmlord, which is an interesting call. I really like it. Similar to what I did with my Parasite of Mortrex, but I think that with Tyranids, your best bet is to go heavy Psychic. If you have it, because they have very powerful Psychers. Excuse me, heavy Psychic or heavy Melee. Just because they can out-melee a lot of other factions in the game. Swarmlord better than Parasite, because the Swarmlord's endgame is just completely bonkers. And yeah, like even there, that big game hunter just punched right through that fear and was like, all right, I'm just going to practically kill you through it all. But yeah, with Tyranids, my best performing one is going to be my Swarmlord, and I have a Psychic Heavy Swarmlord that I played that I really like. I don't think I won with it, but I really enjoy it. I do think that at max level, Tyranids are at a little bit of a disadvantage. Not at max level, but at max level with this large of deck points, there's just so much horrible stuff that the other factions can bring. That even though Tyranids have some powerful cards, they don't really have all that many powerful cards in a combination that really makes sense for something like this. It's just a very challenging way to play this. And then there we go, Medicae. Blah. Now watch this. This is what Medicae should do if you have a 400 health card. I think the last guy got like 60 hit points back in that game with Greyfax. In a minute. And I'm on my damage recovery, so I won't take as much damage back. Yeah, 120, 137, like that's the kind of double. Yeah, that's when you want Medicae for something like these that will actually keep it alive. Because like this thing, I'm pretty sure would have been dead from that hit if I hadn't healed it. Still have 4 cards on the table, yikes. Go ahead and that ranged ready. So I did go into this saying this is probably the most powerful faction and the most powerful warlord for sync PvP. I don't think even the Greyfax could have stood up to this. Because as powerful as the Greyfax deck is, it does leave a lot of your deck points unspent, and this is a faction and deck that spends those points to the max. Which is not to say some of the stuff we've seen today can't beat this. I beat this several times with the decks that I was running. But it's just it is the kind of meta-defining faction and deck for PvP, especially at the Apocalypse level. I'm curious to see if them do another PvP event that is not, that isn't the 400 deck points, because that really does kind of warp the meta a bit and less balanced than typically ways. So there we go. Those were those decks there. If you have any questions, want to see anything about this, I'd be happy to talk about it more, look at something specifically. Some of the most successful decks that I saw that are a little bit more budget friendly, that don't rely on legendaries, of course, are going to be Tolmaron. Very, very good. I did try Illic. He's a pretty powerful piece. It is challenging because he does peter out a bit. Biggest challenge with him is either overkilling or not hitting hard enough. So you'll hit something for, what is it? You need to hit it for 40% of its base damage. 35. Yeah. So you need to hit something for 35% of its base health. Because of how many hit points cards have, it's really easy to get brunted. So you're doing 30% of their health in a single round, which then just negates the ability. So it was okay, but challenging to play. Tau, of course, I just said are really good. Enva is cheaper than Shas'O and does basically the same thing, except that your cards will then get defensive buffs to their stats. I do think Shas'O is just better because his just happens. You don't have to rely on a good matchup and getting hit back to gain your buffs. I did, if you have the cards, Itok, War Speaky, his ability to just shut down opposing abilities is absolutely bonkers if you have the expensive cards to fill a Photon deck with 8 bodyguards at 400 deck points. Those are some of the big ones. Necrons are also extremely powerful just because they have such good cards. I am not particularly good at playing with Necrons, but a big one to watch out for there is going to be the Trazen the Infinite. Where are you, buddy? Trazen. Just because of his ability to steal opposing cards is really, really powerful when all of the cards are 40-plus point cards. Just like Illic, he can be very challenging to play because you have to hit that points margin cleanly, so you have to do a whole lot of damage, but not too much. So it can be tricky to trigger that, but if you steal even one card, that can turn a game fairly comfortably for you. And we'll leave it at that. There's more in there, but those are kind of the big players. Avatar is another one to consider. I mentioned him before just because he's such a strong endgame piece. Likewise, Swarmlord is very powerful, but the two of them don't make very powerful decks. They just themselves are extremely powerful at the endgame. Vol, insanely good just because of the defense she puts on every single card you put out there. You just put in your best cards and they just stick around longer than they should. I do think there's a place for Azrael, but he's also legendary. Not a lot of people have him. He, again, is like Shas'O, can apply a buff without having to get kills or take damage. You just alternate your attack types and all of his cards build up attack as you go. And with the super beefy cards you're able to run in this campaign, that can really add up fast. And you could have cards that survive the game that just have gotten completely out of hand. Same for Huron. He's another one where as you get kills, your cards get buffed up. Just like some others, though, because kills aren't all that consistent or all that quick, I think you get limited utility out of his ability. It can snowball in games where you're going to win anyway, so you get very, very powerful and just blow someone out of the water. But I think in more cases, you're going to play close games where his ability barely triggers. Or you'll get a card, it gets a kill, gets a bunch of bonus stats, and then is killed immediately in return by the opponent. So that's, I bet he's good, but I would be curious to see if his ability actually triggers. So we'll leave it at that. I'm going to go rest my voice. Good luck out there, and until next time.